snake when you argue that. But saying there's no snake, that's just actually put them out. What really means, those are just words. What it really meant is that there is no snake that can be found from the side of the object, which is not merely imputed. A not merely imputed snake that exists from the side of the object. That type of snake is not there. It's not saying there's no conventionally existence. This means, therefore, we say that there is no ultimately or inherently there is no snake that can be found, but conventionally there is a snake. We should say conventionally a snake.
得到结论有蛇，这种两者虽然一个叫有，一个叫没有，可是两者之间是不会互相危害。
第二对着呢，那什么星期六百枚是的年前，他那边什么星期六百枚，等到居住的什么星期六百枚是年前，按地方呢，按他那边写过了查巴斯，他那边写过了查巴斯的，他那边写过写的，马达马这边写过去，是吧？但电话那里呢，马达马这边写过，可是来的去。 다 뒤에 14부진이 밖에 다시 땅들이 제대로 랑기 대관한이나 나오지로 랑기 대관한이나 마다 마시비 이 시버지 아니 시버지기다 나와다 이거 대지지다 아니 단위 시버를 잡아서 지금 안 잡아 강시라 아니 되던 지지기 체마다 안 단위 지지기 체마 신이 강기장 매번 센터 기주숨 대지 기주숨 상에디 아니 단위도 여바다 디 마찬가지 매바스 유명히 개발도 실.
So then saying such, so when we say it's not contradicted by valid cognition, well, there's two types of valid cognition. There's a conventional valid cognition, and there's a valid cognizer that analyzes the ultimate. So here, when we say it exists, we say it is renowned. It is renowned to conventional consciousness. When we say renowned to conventional consciousness, the conventional consciousness is a type of awareness that does not analyze, that does not investigate. So what does it not analyze? What does it not investigate? Suchness. But here we should say the suchness of the object. So a conventional phenomenon is a mind that takes to mind, is an awareness which takes to mind an object, the suchness of which it does not investigate, does not analyze. That is a conventional thing. And so therefore we say, for a phenomenon to exist, it has to be renowned to conventional consciousness. It has to be noted. It has to be taken to mind by conventional consciousness. And that which is renowned, that which is taken to mind, cannot be contradicted by a conventional valid cognizer, and it cannot be contradicted by a valid cognizer that investigates suchness, that investigates the ultimate truth. So when you have those three characteristics come together, it is renowned to a conventional consciousness. Whatever is renowned is not contradicted either by a conventional valid cognizer nor by an ultimate valid cognizer. Whatever fulfills those three characteristics exists conventionally. And if it exists conventionally, it has to fulfill those characteristics.
다 디우신이 다 파게 자외다 얘기신데 얘기 좀 시적으로 다 시차부터래. 다 디강라 테스트 다 뒤지유나 아니 파게 도베 따섬기 콜라다 가서 뜻이 좀 담메다 뒤지 테스트진 다 세르줘야 저리 요구와. 안 디차수나 아니 공당미타와 다 파게 베제기 룸을 때는 추지. 아니 공당미타메다 테스트 용데 딘디기 돌아 심주로 테스트.
So what I've said so far is kind of the framework to everything. So therefore everything, I kind of the framework, the paradigm of this class, I've now established. The framework for this class, I've clarified. So from now on, I want to clarify further on how phenomena are merely imputed by conventional consciousness. And what are the different ways of meditating on them? What are the different ways of going about familiarizing, meditating on them? So this is explanation of this class, like I've just given you the framework now for everything else that follows.
디네 주주요나 아니 진입을 시주디 디제디주디 딜라 아니 기제시에스도 아니 단다 버도 땅아랑기 삼았던 거 주네 아니 군접이 최단지 출랑zam레스 출위 시버지면은 군접이 시간이 너무 많아서 디가는 밥대 제산다 디 출랑zam레스 뒤뒤라 가봐제 디 지금도 세기 또 오마다 상현도 좀 어떻게 말아 다 용나를 보여나 아니 디체로지 하게 슈를 디체로지 아니 양 초진네 출랑zam 세디 킬린 도구면도나 다 뒤가 가시지 하게 탄주보다는 주비기 대외 개발대 간데스 치그래 라단 바지온지데 라이어로 아니 탄주에 라문을 좀 자세 자다마까데 란주비 자세도 주대마상까데 어떤지 시에디디 하게 지단기 고하지마도 주주분의 신지 고하기 도문도 어디 그서로 니보든 시에지마도 다 주주 길에서디 팬도문도 딱 한들 이 대량기 개발대 간데스 치그래 세야저보다 디나 신지기 아니 가서 군수비 취지 난 친지 아니 취고에 가지 문주 주면 난 거에 가지래 그봐 어디서다 아니 다 밖에 사실하면인데 좋습니다 osum에디 다가스다 그 계획이 이와 채와 점을 띠네가지 투대요래 어디를 잡아다 되게 가시지라 되지 못도 가서 우리 내라고 못들어와
如果讲了刚才这两大部分之后还有时间的话，
So then if there's more time, Gisela would like to explain the way an omniscient consciousness perceives the varieties of phenomena, in other words, conventional truth. So there will be some explanation, if there's enough time, about this. So why is this something? So this kind of issue comes up because actually conventional truths are only, they're just appearances to a mistaken consciousness. They're mere appearances to a mistaken consciousness. So there, if that's the case, well, how do we then describe how the omniscient mind perceives the phenomena? Why is it in that way? Why are phenomena? Why do we have to say that conventional phenomena are mere appearances to a mistaken consciousness? Furthermore, what is the difference between the Madhyamika Prasangita tenet school and the Madhyamika Svatantrika tenet school? So we may just use these words, okay, they're different. The followers of the Prasangika school, they deny true existence on its own side 100%, whereas the followers of the Svatantrika only 90%. But that's just words. I'm saying one denies or refutes more and the other one refutes less. But that's just words. What is the actual difference between those two philosophical systems, the system of the Prasangika and the Svatantrika? So, also, why conventional truth? When they appear, why are we necessarily mistaken with regard to their appearance? Whenever a conventional truth appears to our consciousness, there is a mistaken appearance. Why is that? Furthermore, another issue is when we talk about an arhat with remainder, or a foe destroyer with remainder, and a foe destroyer or an arhat without remainder. So the difference between those two, is it just that the scholars just kind of wanted to make some kind of differentiation between the two, and it's just kind of a verbal distinction between the two? Or what is the actual important issue? What is actually behind it? Is there some important point why we differentiate between an arhat with remainder and an arhat? So this is what we are
那希望在我们在讨论我们见识福地的这个主题的时候呢，那针对以上三个题目，他希望能够得到一定的答案。
亲戚老的亲戚毛老大的，他对吧？因为是自己有的，你就对的，他感觉稍稍那边那注意西边那段，工作大嘛，注意西边那段对那么是，对这一起嘛送过来，稍稍那那，对了，那提过当的，那注意西边那段工作那个有那当年的工作是呗。 제바스만 얘기도 아스 되고 싶지 아니 마주이 시비니도 되나라나 아니 군접되기디 아니 된다는데 아니 마주이 시바 남친 얘기도 아스 나도 따딜을 해 가리자고도 그러봐 해 가리요고도
And so, being the object of an accurate mind and being the object of an inaccurate mind. So being this differentiation, being the object of an accurate mind and not being the object of an accurate mind. So also when we say something is found, is the object that is found by a mistaken mind, and something which is the object that is found by a non-mistaken mind. So we usually differentiate between conventional and ultimate truth from that point of view. But then the question arises, okay, so emptiness is not found by a mistaken mind. But then again, what about the conceptual consciousness that perceives emptiness? The inferential cognizer that realizes emptiness, which is a mistaken mind. Likewise, if conventional truth is an object that is perceived by a mistaken mind, what about the omniscient mind of a Buddha, which is totally non-mistaken? It nonetheless perceives a conventional truth. So how do we distinguish, therefore, between a conventional and ultimate truth from the point of view of being found by a mistaken mind and being found by a non-mistaken mind? So, if you have any kind of opinion on that, then think about this earlier and then we can later discuss it. Also, the Geshe-la said something I forgot to mention, I just realized. He said we should prepare with regard to how to realize conventional phenomena, how an omniscient consciousness realizes conventional phenomena. He should read in advance. That you can only do if you have already studied Umma, then you know where to find this. Are there any questions? So Gela is saying, the Geshe-la gave Gela a piece of paper with a question, and Gela said, it may be easier that I answer this tomorrow, so I have time in my room to read this question in depth, and then I can answer it tomorrow. Are there other questions?
가베 리바데 조직 토기를 렌제 거라 토기 요리 렌제스나 토기 타토기 방보 타토기 방보 잡으래 렌제 용식을 아니 렌제 기사디 세베 가서 조디 동이 하마고 베 센젤라 아니 렌제디 람고레 강이스나르와 공소 미람 낭신 괜찮 렌제 하마고나 미람 낭로라 동에 용식을 이냐 미람 레체바 이나라 렌제有말에 렌제 조당有말에 강양有말에 네 하고 괜히나 동이 하고 히나 이냐가 기사디 세도 균요랭가 하고 있도 이냐가 지세마양 수통이 말에 동이 외수 하고 괜또 차켄 야미나 제부 차켄이나 렌제게 거라 오늘 지나 주도 제고 말에 아니 디 당량도 가서 양용와 디 오늘 지나 양 요 말에 아니 디 오늘 지나 강양 요 말에 이내양 계자디 카도시나 종님 마도케 코노테비 년카 유장 아니 코노테제 미남 나노라 동행 용수 용배 년카 유장 시내 내제디 만뉴 고르레 시내 대질 라비르레 다동 나좀 영화 투 계자디로 만족이 소소 영화 망보 양 노르와 디디 카도 지난 나좀 연기도 띠도 소기도 계자디 가리체의 이체 두기리 소소 빈 영화 네, 대제슈. 이거 맞춰라.
나중에
因为我的题目非常没有水准，所以我最后拜托老师听完这题目不要生气，这样子。啊。
So, the translator has a question. So, if phenomena do not exist from the side of the object, they do not exist. So, Genna's response was, well, actually, we cannot say they're totally non-existent. Why? Because they do not exist. We have experience out from the point of view of our own feeling and experience. We know it's there, so we cannot say it's actually not there. Then her question is, well, that's mistaken, because actually our feeling is not there. So our feeling, our experiences, they also don't really exist. So how can we rely on that kind of feeling or experience? And then likewise, another question was, if we say phenomena do not exist intrinsically or inherently, the reasoning, if we use as the reasoning the law of cause and effect, the law of karma, so actually the law of karma, I double checked that it was not something, it was not dependent on writing, but it was the law of karma. If we use that as the reason, she's saying we don't need that, we don't need to use that reason. We can just say it's just like a dream. If we were just like in a dream, we know phenomena when we look for what we're dreaming about. Well, in the dream, there's no law of cause and effect, so there's nothing really there. So when we think about emptiness, we don't need that kind of as a reasoning. And when we know emptiness, we also don't need it. So therefore, it's not really necessary to think along those lines. There's really nothing there. It's just like a dream. And again, she went back to the experience, like our own experience is unreliable, it is mistaken. And then she said, lastly, I'm so sorry for bothering you with this question. And I said, like, jokingly, yes, I'm so angry now. So Krishna asked her, are you differentiating between not existing in reality and not existing in general? Are you differentiating between those two, or do you not see a difference? I didn't think about this one.
아주 요말이신 그거로. 다른 대체로 맞추기 뒤로다.
So she's saying, I haven't heard about any great detail, but it kind of seems like if it's not there in reality, that means it's not there. And so Krishna was like, well, do you mean it's not there in reality? It's not there?
딜레디 저 당고디 갈래. 남쪽이 아니 대도를 초와 대도를 투레 용화를 투레 용화대 너저를 나와. 다 디켜를 마치니 기지시나 너와의 요말. 밀람레 나와라 밀람 다야 바라메와 밀람의 요마레 노르와의 요마레 노르게의 요마레 아니 돈이 신경의 마신경 기지시기도 신경의 요마레 마신경의 요마레 아니 가르쳐 봐.
First question, so when we say happiness and such and so forth, it goes back to the feeling or experience, and then here our feelings and experience, they're mistaken. So if we take the feeling and experience, if we take that as kind of the measurement for something existing or not, well, we can't rely on that because it's mistaken, it's not actually there. We're actually mistaken with regard to that object too, and it's just like a dream. So when Geshe says, well, the dream is also not there, there's no dreamer, there's no one who's thinking about emptiness, there's no one who's mistaken, there's no one who's realized emptiness, there's no one who does not realize emptiness. So in the end, you can't even use those as examples, because even those examples are actually not there.
딜레디 전에 딱 페이지 레탄달라는 얘기도 그래서 그래 가시기 다디 내가 다 체마추님이 됐어. 다 창문 놀바 지디 다 체마샤서 요 말이스 차샤서 요 말이스 간래 다디 네 니마치도 통송 다디 가와이 세부팅미도 레지 그 파게 잠세지기 디 가서 라서 루사 지 티드니 디자인 비자 가래 통유 디 티드 디자인에 아니 파게 미스 구마승기 다 기제제제 딱 그자는 라디 포토가 제 와서 아니 지 와서 되지 야 세컨드 지야 세컨드 다른 못돼 당원이네 아니 콜도스 레바다 다 잠시 이미 계절에 배트 키지 티루도 스페시도메스 데레다네 인티 안타스지 라디 다시 할레버레 섬에는 야스트 야 야즈르네 미디 코 잠시지 이미 계절에 키티루도 키 저거지기 메로 잠시듯이 티루도 라디 괜찮아 서버지 그게 딜레도 서버지 근데 야스트니야 미지 잠시지 키티루도라디 코 사제 다치 니진도 된지기 파게 다가지 기술이 된지 라드 튜브도 서버도 리텐 라이미 더버산에 유샤르스 라디 어디디시에 들어와 제사 아니 문제 디도 디민도 레 체마 요말 샤사제 요말이스
So some people say that some say that therefore also even a valid cognizer does not exist because there's nothing really to positive valid cognizer on because we say the phenomena cannot be found, so therefore there's also no valid cognizer. And Geshe-la said, I saw this example, the story was taught somewhere, and he said somewhere in the scripture, I forget where it was, and then when he asked me about it, I said, no, I was told by my teacher about it. So it's about 3 thieves, and a man was having a goat, and he was taking the goat somewhere. So the person who had the goat was a Brahmin, and these 3 thieves, they wanted to get the goat. So they were going, one was at the top of the bottom of the mountain, the other one halfway through the mountain, the other one on the top of the mountain. And so apparently a Brahmin having a dog is seen as something negative, so that's kind of the basis of it, to explain that. So the first thief went up to this Brahmin and said, he was holding this goat, saying, oh, a Brahmin having a dog, a Brahmin taking along a dog, and the Brahmin is weird, so he was a little closer, but never mind, just continues walking. And then halfway up the mountain, the next thief comes up to him and says, oh, look at that, the Brahmin is holding a goat. What is this? How weird is that? A dog. A Brahmin is taking along a dog. And again, he gets kind of confused, but continues walking. And when he meets the thief, again, he goes up to him and said, look, the Brahmin is having a dog here. And so in that moment, he really got suspicious. He was thinking, oh, I must be just mistaken with regard to the features of this goat. It is actually a dog. So then he just left the dog, gave up the goat, thinking that it was a dog. So this basically means here that this is taken as an example that even the valid cognizer itself is mistaken, and so therefore there is no valid cognition. Is it really like that?
지단의 문제디 남준이 또 한테고야 지디도 먼저 선도 시차고 마땅히 리지나 어딘지니 빼지 꿰용데 남상 고통줘야지 제선 남준이 거 기베시는 지연데스 왜니실의 대바이미 이와요 말아 기베시는 이는나 대바이나 마히라는 대바 용시에요 말아 레디다 데릴레고 가르레스나 기바지게 빼지 자리인도 하고 시용데 시단디 인지무 시용데 레레도 아니 레텐데 마인베 쳐다시디 마레텐데 제자엔 기베시는 지연데스 뒤로 띵고인이시 말아 왔다니 엔디나 신지기 제상 빼지 키지 빼세디 기바지기 전에 다 잡으세요. 추에 잡으세요. 빼지 키지 디리레데 임바찬 빼디 키지 말인 멤버찬 디나 신지기 야 추진 지킨 아니 배바미 두자도 인숨지 통나 뒤에 두자도 제상 배바세 두자를 했어요. 야 배바 야고 드니 지기 인숨지 토나 뒤에 야고도 지는 배바세 빼야고요 그랬어요. 니가 너는 뒤로 제상 먼저 남샤 군데 된 도너테 왜지래도 하디 이제 로비 가라 기지 님비 가라 먼저 뒤 검시디 가 두고도
是平常没有在仔细思考事情的人的话，有
So in general, we say that when someone takes an example, we can easily follow that. But here we're trying to use this example in a specific way to really gain some understanding. It is not like some people say an expert, someone who's eloquent, can actually make you generate faith in the existence and non-existence of the same thing. So, that actually means, of course, if you have faith in the existence of something, you don't have faith in the non-existence of that. But what this kind of phrase means, what that saying means, if someone is very eloquent, very good at speaking, they say, oh, it doesn't exist, and they give you some good reasons, and you have faith, you believe that it exists. But when you then say, well, it actually doesn't exist, then the person makes you also believe that it doesn't exist, so they can convince you of anything. So this is not what we're talking about here. We're not saying like someone who's an expert in talking, who's very eloquent, who's very verbally skilled, that they can make you believe anything. That's not what we're talking about here. Also, an example can be used in many different ways. It can be used to illustrate one thing, but it can also be used to illustrate the opposite of that. So, but that's not really what we're talking about here. So, we need to understand that valid cognition here needs to be really applied. This is important. And so we shall also give the example. Oftentimes, we tend to generalize in the sense we see one object and generalize with regard to that object. So the example again I gave was, for example, we see one Tibetan or two Tibetans and they don't behave very nicely, and we say, oh, these Tibetans are really not good people. Tibetans are not good people. Or we meet one Tibetan or another Tibetan, we meet a few Tibetans, and they're really nice, they're really friendly, and we say, oh, Tibetans are so wonderful. So really, both cases it's wrong. Both are wrong. Saying all Tibetans are really nice, all Tibetans are really bad. So this is really wrong. We're just generalizing. So we need to understand here the difference between what is actually there and between generalizing reality. Another story.
이는 중디 루중문의 인기말에 타서의 수혜시 요랬다. 하기 장벌라 견주진 장배기 리어라 뒤술의 견주진 수혜시 요지라. 장배기 미지 타서 레르스. 아니 다디 타설레네 타설레 미모 보여래 다 미타미다 뭐 보여디 근데 섭섭치마도 처음으로 저는 노래니 보여레스 나레스. 아마 노래기 치도 아니 그딜라 중부신이 가우지야. 중부시 가우지야 디다레스 아마 노래 치는 거 안 처음으로 주디자네 아니 베베기 대가 창이 신지 바지고 있는 창이지가 어디 투레스 대가 창이도 저기 너불라 디다요 중부디 다 거란도 잡아 통으로 안 너를 기술 타고 맞아 기자 봐 기자가 잡아라 그래서 더 갈래 올스나 경아리 가치를 나와서 너를 기술 타고
there's another story, so I guess that's probably just a story. It's probably just a story that Hassan made up in order to kind of make fun of someone from Tsangba. So it's another area near Lhasa. So the story goes that a person from Tsangba came for the first time to Lhasa. And so so someone warned him, people may confuse you, there's so many people there, they may confuse you. So then he thought, oh, to make sure that no one confuses me, he put like a little like a piece of tea or something, a white pea, stuck it to his nose. And then as he was walking along, he met like a kind of an actor, like someone doing dancing along with like a mask on his face, kind of a dancer, like someone like from the Tibetan opera. And that person also had a little white thing there. And so he thought, oh, that person is me, and I am him. So he was of the little sign here, just to make sure it was not mistaken. So he thought, oh, this is me, and he is me, and I am him. Can we really mistake ourselves? Really think, oh, this person is me and I'm that person? Can we actually make such a mistake?
노래 탑시지 열어지는데 야보다 참아 가리 나셔나 참아는 제버지지 근데 나오시다
because then we would see everyone as equal. We would see everyone as myself. We would see everyone as equal, and we would equally be able to generate love towards others. So it would actually be good if we could confuse others with ourselves.
미숨시 먹어도 저불이 미상어 용제 아니 미신다지를 주고진이 디키라를 가져라면 컨디션 노르시에 하면도
So lead aside 2 or 3 people, everyone in the world, no one, if someone were to say, tell us this person is you, we would never make that mistake thinking someone else is us.
지산다 동행용의 갑래 리기 동행용의 생기 동행용의 갑래 딩지 동행용 대디 동행문에 말했으니 바기다든지 코랑문 동행도 조여 말했어 라바이나 아니 생기 남자다 마지부터 총으로 줬으기로 이는 나사람제 되기로 돈이 또 상인지래 답하게 돈이 또 상인 빼기 음악이 개버 친구지래 아니 뒤주는 나기로 매일 나와 참 차기로
So
돈이 마동이 그냥 기질입니다.
사카시 포켓 대체 같이 쪼내 가겠는데요. 사카시 포켓.
맞디다 그 저하고는 바기 레벨이 내가 지도고 말어. 근데 신도 좀 차이입니다. 뒤에 좀 가로. 신도 뒤쪽은 차이입니다. 신이 한번 더 돌으시네 대성대 돌으시는 세계 동화대. 저 뒤에 거라고 전화 로가를 봤어. 근데 세계 유행인데라. 그 세계 도단에 차와랑 심해 볼 때는 뱀나다 가리 뭐 가리치네 가지 차와라 하리마도 뒤도도입니다. 딱 그 매버서야도 그런 규제 매버서는 매버 자들마도 제 시점이 매버서입니다.
So therefore, our problems, our difficulties, when we look at the body, or we look at our mind, so whether physical problems or mental problems, in reality, the person that experiences those problems, we find that upon analysis, this person cannot be found. But that doesn't mean that these problems disappear. In other words, it doesn't mean there's no pain in the body, for example. It's not like these problems disappear. The physical pain is still there. Certain awareness is still there. So when we realize emptiness, it doesn't mean that if you put a knife in your arm, the same kind of emotion is not, the same kind of sensation, physical sensation is not there. Or if someone burns you, if you burn yourself with a fire, it doesn't mean your skin doesn't get burned. So it's not that these kind of sensations themselves, as they're experienced, that they totally disappear. And then the Chinese translator said, well, but some people experience pain and some people do not experience pain. And Geshe-la said, well, yeah, that's true. Of course, there's living beings that experience pain, and a tree doesn't experience pain. A tree does not experience pain. And then she said, well, don't they also? And Geshe-la said, no, they actually do not. There's no fear and so forth. And then the translator says, well, if I think along those lines, I think I'm going to be crazy. Anyway, so Geshe-la said, well, in actuality, heat is still heat. So in order to feel hot, to feel physically hot, we need to change the circumstances that cause the heat. So it's not by explaining emptiness that we do not experience any longer heat. Heat needs to be removed by removing the causes and conditions that give rise to the heat.
딱 한시 바기 두산은 지금에도 매산은 뱅기도 저것도나 칼라사와도 칼라산은 지기도 신동산은 지금에도 탈라산은 지금에도 뒤는 지금 지냐래 미기워지는 지기워 말해 기워지는 예 지기워래 엔디 바기 뒤다 지금 지냐래 다 돈이 또 라네 바기 아니 가리산에 지딩이 지나 가리체네 케큐니 메딩이 지유나 아니 다가라다 So therefore, when you realize emptiness, it's still you have to eat the right kind of food. You still have to eat healthy kind of food. You still have to clothe yourself. You cannot start eating trees and dust and so forth, right? And also, so you have to go in accordance with those conventions. When you accumulate non-virtue, you should still not accumulate non-virtue. It is still not okay to accumulate negativities, and one should accumulate positive actions. So it's not that whenever you do, everything becomes possible. That when you realize emptiness, that whatever you can just do whatever you want. There's still certain actions that we need to abide by.
就是造了正德空性之后呢，那可以不正德空性之后可以不造善业，可以造恶业，除非是你认为这样子，要不然即使你正德空性，你依旧是应该要造善业，不要造恶业才对。
这样的我们真的研究了那这个。
If you don't understand, please again.
连你到底这个名字呢？
If what I said does not really fit with your question, does not really answer your question, please ask.
空气学的吃样子下去，
啊，
跟他空气学的样子，就这回就是。我就在咱们的这个新闻面那样。我离开说，所以咱们的这个新闻面那样，아니 속상을 심히 놓치다도 되게 되지요스 타니도 네버베 또 드리지요는 디 코랑기 타니도 수대 아랑게니 자와 가린 고체되지 요리세요. 디 여행되거나 아니 하나가도 사타고님 전주선 위치 뭐 땅인데 그 라문주 요마드 간다. 타니도 내가 지기디 릴 나서 요금스러시. 디 여행되거나 양간조 디 제가 류두는 얘기 두는 갈아 유세지. 류두는 매당지 쓰는데. 딱 가시기 지시자인데 동행여행이 바자지 세버렸어. 동행여행이 레센 동행 많이 버렸어. 세지 개가 가시기 지시견샤. 야 가시기 뒤 내가 류도 코에 류 말했어. 되게 지시견샤 이내 주거랑 되는 생인데 소 남도 매당디 동행 유수로 소샤. 이다리.
남도 매네.
남도 매거디. 신달에 빼자지. 근데 대신 매거 뒤 동행 이유 주제수로 시켜놔.
So, the question was in relation to what the Chinese translator just said. So, there is a difference between perceiving a physical form as truly existent, thinking it exists truly existent, and just conventionally existent. And so, actually, when we talk about kind of like pain still being the same, it kind of remains the same, as Geshe-la just explained. Well, for example, Gentrukno said that on the first ground, for example, on the first bhumi, like a bodhisattva, it says in the supplement to the middle way, if they give away their body, for example, they cut it up, so there's no pain. So as it says in the scripture that if there is no physical pain, of course there is no mental pain. So then some say, well, this is because, some give this explanation that this is because now the physical body, the imprints are no longer there to experience the physical problem. Other people explain this to mean that from the first ground onwards there's no physical pain any longer because the body is no longer a samsaric body. But Gentrukno is saying that when we look at the auto-commentary on the supplement to the middle way by Chandrakirti, there actually Chandrakirti explains that the reason is that the conceptual consciousness does not interpret the pain any longer. So therefore it's the conceptual consciousness does not perceive it any longer as pain, and so therefore there's no longer any physical pain. So please can Geshe-la expound on this or explain this?
지와디. 아주 이도네.
The people who speak to the listening to the translation how they understood the question.
되게 땅이 방티니 따다다 두서 말해. 또 어디 맞아? 아니 양주 기지티는 뒤로. 되게 사당부 탑산이 인디기 사당부 어디기다 지 주바이나자 메기 자바이나자 동해만 용해지 송여봐. 그래서는 뒤송겨요. 진짜 뒤 동해만 용해디 엔타나 주바랑 전화는 전화 아니 대신에 비중생이 동해만 용 송샤스 뒤로 뒤송샤스. 다 가시기 있으나 사당부디 거의 기와만 인상 동해만 용해서야 저보다 가시기 레슨이 동해만 용해서야 되는 실수도 없어. 아니 대신에 그래.
딘신매가 대화랑 돈이 동용금에나 아니 딘신매는 탄유도 수비 셴바디 여러 가고
어디게
되게 관심이 동용금
동용금 말했어. 어디로 왔다. 딘신매는 다 탄이기 셴바섬디 또버디 여인상 되게 전 동만 용에 가르랬어. 다 디르다. 지와디.
So, Again, so Geshe-la explained now, but just to make it shorter, so I repeat it because it becomes even clearer. So it is said that in the supplement and in certain texts, it is explained that once a bodhisattva reaches the first ground, then even if you put a knife, if you stick a knife into your body, or you burn yourself with fire, there's no pain experience. So in the Auto commentary, it is explained that this is because there's no attachment to true existence. So therefore, there's no experience of such. Whereas some would explain, no, that's because the body is no longer a samsaric body. Or another person may explain that's because the karmic results are no longer experienced. So then Geshe-la asked Gentrukdula, so what is your question really? And Gentrukdula was saying, well, if there's no longer any pain experience, doesn't that contradict what Geshe-la said earlier when he said, well, even if you realize emptiness, the pain is still there, the sensation is still there. So if there is a conventional experience of the pain, and therefore the pain is still there, wouldn't that be contradictory?
Lulu tunga yong ma yong di ane tenshin yumen ki tone pechi tishi jab tuku ma resam tingi kare sana tajamba ki u nyuya da tenti ki luju mabu yue deba di pechi tenju yue ki kele ngu chigiri di tajamba yarwa tsetila tajamba tongi ane subu di rangja yarwa ta sem tajamba tongi chizan mashi badu tsetila ane subu naya da tusu yungu ares di ta timongi da do tusu nanda mabu yue badu su pechi tenju yue kele ngu chigiri resam tingi.
So, Geshe-la was saying, I asked Gentrukdula, so where exactly does it talk about that in the Auto commentary? Does it talk about it on the occasion of the first Rumi? And Gentrukdula says yes. So Geshe-la said, well then I need to look at this, I need to actually look at that text and see what are the earlier and later kind of explanations, in which context has it been explained. So then I'll be able to give a full answer. But in general, I find it difficult to think that there is no longer any physical suffering if there's no more attachment to true existence from the first ground onwards. Why? Because we talk about a flow destroyer or an arhat with remainder. So we say that this arhat has become liberated within this lifetime with the samsaric kind of aggregates. So it's not they have new aggregates, no, they attained liberation newly in this life and still have the old aggregates which are the result of afflictions and karma. And it is said that they still experience the physical karma of their previous actions, such as getting sick, feeling unwell, physically at least. So this is something that is explained and is accepted in the tenet systems, all the different tenet systems. So there's no discrepancy. It's not something that is accepted not by the Prabhupada. It's also accepted by them, must be accepted by them.
The digi satambava gi page kuchi dagarang la ta unzugi ta majabu chedi la satambo thoba ina ro che dagarang la ina ta laji tajuma na shin subudira chacha de ro digi tu ta dile page mera ta ina duzi chi de nagri bes ta tigo de chi go ligi ro ta.
So from the point of view of like a first ground bodhisattva here, who has attained the first bhumi or the first ground in this very life, well then they still have an ordinary samsaric body. So it's still the same body from before. And the question that would arise would be, with that same body, do they no longer experience pain upon a knife cutting them, or fire, or coming too close to fire?
The call Tishichi any Chumendigi, the Lela Chang Tishichi, the Karisum Yoresena, and the Tapet and Peje Minda to sing it in the Kanjuna Kari-Yoresena, and the Sadamoto Tabi Chetamje the Teordo was eating is in the Tobares. Chetamje Teordo was eating is in the Tabna Kari-Yoresena, and a Peggy Melerine, Choa de Wanue, and pagi jizune choa di dewa nyue kari cheba ine dunga yunga kin kanji cheba ine ane choa dewa bashi nyue jires wana tingi jing di kanji stoba resi na ane di kasi ure namji mashid kemina gangi tala kasi jimba deda nye warshi yu dewa tobar jurjis kaji ta tunda dire ngala kala chengin da pagi di chingi tsama lo ane di ji yung warsho ngala nyingur chingi roba chingi 팬당의 참마디 용어서 말은 뇌经验다 파기소经验다 지주부랑에는 예다당에다 디 참마디 용어서스네 간제 야가 두고 간지지인의 참마 디기 용어서스입니다 생기 되는 장네 유를 벌도 도스 장뒤 디기 남이 딜을 때네 최든지 되어줄 등이지 더 디기 경기 아니 가리 하게 남바 있네 좋아되어 게임해야지 어떤지 지수
So, taking some other example, here's some